Rise of Hawk, Part 4, Scene 16. 5 weeks later, 19th of Parla, 3010. David stood in the cathedral bell tower, leaning over the stone wall as he looked northwards out across the city. To his right, the sun was starting to rise, throwing a dazzle of rainbow colours into the dense air and slowly pushing back the clouds of the nearby nebula from the sky. The city was fairly quiet so early in the morning, but he liked it. The silent peace of it eased the raging agony inside of him. On the western horizons, at the bright point of light, which was their nearest star, Elata. The name meant hope and light in one of the old languages. One day he would visit that star. For some reason it had called to him since he was a small boy. All year round it was the brightest star in the Iranian sky, and the easiest astrological body to identify among the billions of stars and the vast coloured clouds in which their solar system floated. He sighed and brushed his face with one hand. He should be going to RoH with the others. He should have gone to rescue his son from the desert the moment he was sent there. He should have killed his father years ago, not only for his own personal vengeance for the continued cruelty, but also because of how much better the agency would be without Sharon Cody Sr. in it. But the knowledge of seeing the future changed everything. If he lost control, even for an instant, it could spell disaster for everyone. That cost was too high for him to be selfish and simply do what he wanted. But some days it was hard to moderate his actions. He hoped the others would be all right. Asha's group was already in the Ronin city of Carmel. They had to get the explosives from the Ronin barn, but there was a good chance that some or all of them would die in acquiring it. Knowing that fact cut at his heart, but if they failed to get them, there would be no stopping the threat from destroying everything. It was a month away from his 10-year anniversary of becoming Hawk. This was neither a thing to celebrate nor condemn. The 10-year anniversary was what it was, but the time had gone fast. 5 more years, and it would all start in earnest. He still had much to do, but he'd get it done. He couldn't not. He sighed and let his thoughts drift back to Asha and the others. Because he wasn't involved, he couldn't see much of what would happen in RoH. He had only a vague sense that it wasn't good. If everyone did their job, they'd get their explosives. But at what cost? He couldn't even guess. He took one last look at the fading sky and turned to the trap door that led back inside. It was time he got back to the tower to continue wrestling with Heth's suspicions. Heth was a good man, but when the time came, he'd probably have to escape the agency or die with Sharon in the explosion, because he was too good at his job. The identity of Hawk had to stay unknown for a further 5 years, and left to his own devices, Heth would undoubtedly find his proof. Scene 17. The city of Carmel, RoH, later that morning. Asha watched out of the window through the detached rifle scope. The hotel room they had rented was decorated in a yellow and gold palette. The double bed that sat against the wall behind her had a threadbare bedspread with a gold mosaic pattern. The walls were papered with lines of white gold flowers and vertical stripes. The carpet was faded cream with brown splotches. Even the curtains that framed the floor-to-ceiling windows were buttercup yellow. She liked yellow as a colour, but not that much. It was a cheap and fairly nasty hotel, but it was oddly luxurious to be somewhere that was warm, dry, mostly clean, and had actual furniture. Asha smirked. That a one-star hotel was now a luxury for her was amusing. For the moment, though, the target of her attention wasn't the seedy room, but the ancient manor house standing across the road from it. The house, with its beautiful cream stone walls, was probably several hundred years old, and, until recently, survived the barrage of time quite well. Unfortunately, its entire third level had crumbled in on itself, and the outside of the east wing was almost completely black with soot. Despite the relatively recent fire damage, Asha thought the old building still had much of its historical pride left in it, as it stood tall and ancient over its contemporary neighbours. Behind her, Leland came in from the bathroom, and Asha glanced over her shoulder at their new Ronin recruit. "You sure they're in there, Leland? Why would they come back here?" "Yep, I'm sure." The broad-shouldered woman grinned at her. "It was Mena and God's family estate. Trust me, if Mena's still alive, they're in there." Are you sure about the boy? They're going to kill him the moment they see him. Asha snorted. They're certainly going to try. They'd been lucky that a hotel had been built so close to the target residence. At least she and Lalane had somewhere comfortable to keep an eye on the proceedings. The others had no such luck, being in an abandoned house next door and a park on the other side of the property. With Lalane ready, she spoke into the radio. Sound off. 1, 2, Nama replied. 3, 4. Talon's voice was clipped and tense. Bana and Zack had their own radio earpieces, and the sound off told them that everyone was ready and they could approach the house. She shuffled down into a more comfortable position on her belly and reattached the scope to the rifle. Behind her, Lalane grabbed the binoculars off the bed. Here we go. May Lady Krenna smile on us today. Scene break. Mena's old family library was dusty and half of the books were so water damaged from the fire that there was little use in even trying to read them. Their family had collected those books for 10 generations, and it was all destroyed by the Ronin Special Guard in one night of merciless killing. What are we going to do? Mena paced past his little brother Goyd, who sat slumped in the lawn chair watching him. Nothing. We've lost, Mena. No. He turned and pointed at his brother's dark, angular face. Not as long as I breathe. Brother, Goyd's black eyes were sad. There's only a small number of us left. There's no money for another year, and only enough explosives for one more building. What more can we do? Parliament House, Mena snarled. The Iranan Embassy. Half of this southern city if we processed and rationed it well enough. He was yelling, and only when he heard his own voice echoing off the high stone ceiling did he realize his volume. He cleared his throat. They destroyed our family, and they will pay for the humiliation. Look at this house, Goyd. Don't you remember what it used to look like? How many died in that fire? The history they've destroyed? I was 5. His little brother sounded bitter. Of course I don't. The Rona Aban was created to right that wrong, and the other wrongs that the Guard have committed. The Malan family, our family, has protected this city for over 500 years. So, it's our responsibility to keep fighting. You may not understand that, but I will not give up until our victory or my very last breath. Mena, someone called from down the hall. You better see this. Walking past Goyd, Mena strode out of the library and down towards the front parlour. Above him, white marble stairs spiralled up to the left and right of the main door, and for a moment he saw it as it used to be, a house filled with elegant antique furniture and a history as old as the city itself. He heard the sounds of his other siblings laughing upstairs in the playroom. The scent of cigar smoke came to him from the den where his father and uncles would talk business all day, and he heard echoes of their mother playing complicated concertos on the grand piano in the main sitting room. He saw in his mind's eye the servants flitting about in formal uniforms, keeping the house running at peak efficiency. He smiled at the memories and sighed. It was all gone now. Brushing off the painful ghosts of his past, Mena stepped through the doorway out of the old den. A part of him wished that his father and uncles could be sitting there smoking and negotiating. Instead, the den walls were black, the air permanently filled with the scent of smoke and mildew. High velvet curtains, ripped, melted, and burned, hung ineffectively over the dusty glass. Aaron, the youngest of their group, stood behind a drop of intact curtain and stared out at the front yard. What is it? Barked Mena. Trespasser. The 30-year-old turned around and faced him, and his dark eyes looked tense. What do you want me to do? Through the window, Mena saw a young Iranan man wearing grey clothes. He was in his late teens, perhaps early 20s, with black and red streaked hair. Mena lifted an eyebrow at Aaron. What do we usually do with trespassers? Aaron smirked. Yes, sir. Scene 18. Being careful to hide his psychic presence, Bana followed Zack down the driveway at a safe distance. They wanted the Rona Aban to see Zack, but not the man with the assault rifle following him. Bana stuck close to a fairly high and overgrown hedge that lined the long gravel driveway on one side. Ahead of him, by about 10 metres, The boy strode confidently down the middle of the drive. Bana only sensed a snippet of tension in the young man. The boy had learned how to mask his fear well. He'd seen some of what Zack could do, but he still wasn't sure if he was ready for this kind of combat. They neared the metal gates leading to the house, and Bana stopped behind a pillar of stone to watch. Zack, with his long black and red hair cut at odd angles around his face, should have already been spotted by any inhabitants. The young man pulled open one gate and stepped into the cobbled area in front of the manor house. The house must have once belonged to a fairly well-to-do family, but, like many when the Ronan government enacted a law stating that Psi were a threat to national security, the special guard must have locked the family in their house and lit it on fire. Bana understood why the Rona Barn existed. He even understood why they bombed government facilities. What he couldn't understand was why, in the last 3 years since a traitor in their midst nearly wiped them out, they continually targeted schools and other civilian facilities. Targeting non-combatants was no way to win a war, and certainly no way to make a point about justice. They changed from freedom fighters like the rebels to terrorists focused solely on revenge. This made them unpredictable and dangerous, which made him very nervous. Watching the boy, Bana hoped again that Zack had the courage for this. The young man walked to a point in the cobbled entranceway, halfway between the gates and the front doors, and stopped. With his shoulder to the cream-coloured stone, Bana lifted his weapon in the direction of the house. It couldn't have been more than a minute that the boy waited before muffled gunshots fired from out of the manor house. Zack dodged expertly out of the way as bullets ricocheted off the cobbles around him. A full 3 minutes went by as someone fired at Zack, and the boy dodged, unhurt, out of the way. He looked a little like he was tap dancing across the courtyard for their entertainment and not for his own survival. The gunfire stopped, and soon after the front door opened. 2 tall Ronin men wearing jeans and dark long-sleeved shirts stepped out with their handguns aimed at Zack. Bana moved into sight so they knew Zack wasn't alone. 2 men flinched, but did not fire. "This is private property. What do you want?" barked the elder of the 2 Ronin. "My name is Zack," the young boy said confidently. "This is Bana. We'd like to talk about the possibility of the Psi rebels trading with the Rona Ban." "What makes you think you have anything we want?" Bana stepped forward. "We can get you the one who betrayed you." The elder of the 2 men snorted. "You can bring us the traitor back here to Kamo." "No, that would be too complicated, but we can give you the transport and the means to go to Aram and kill him yourself." The man lifted an eyebrow at him. "What do you want in return?" "Explosives." The man smirked. "Aside from Kid Dodgy here, what's to stop us from just killing you here and now?" A rifle shot fired from the neighbouring house where Nama was hidden, and a bullet pinged off the stone at their feet. Bana was unable to suppress his smirk. "We're not complete amateurs." The 2 men looked at each other, and he sensed a thread of telepathic conversation between them. The elder spoke. "Come back at dusk with an offering of weapons and ammo for us, and we might negotiate." He turned his back on them. "Now get off my property." Scene break. Mena walked away from the Iranan men, and Goyd followed. He deliberately turned his back to them without fear or pause, to show them he was not intimidated by their ridiculous approach. Mena let his brother step inside first, before entering and closing the door behind him. "Aaron," he bellowed. The young man's long, dark face peeked out through the den doorway. "Yeah?" Mena pointed behind him with a thumb. "Follow those fools home." "Yes, sir." He and Goyd made their way under the left-hand grand staircase and returned to the library. His brother looked back at him over one shoulder. "What do you think they really want?" "I don't know." Mena sighed and brushed his short black hair with one hand. "But we'll see how bad they want it tonight." He sat down on a plastic lawn chair in the middle of the wreckage. A frown drifted into his face. "But their offer might give us the opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." "What do you mean?" His brother handed him a beer bottle from the ice chest between them and sat down. "That Iranan pleta." "The one who wants to buy the bank?" Goyd took a swig from his beer. He had been drinking a lot lately. "Yeah." Mena's jaw tightened for a moment. Egotistical Arkanan won't get the last of my family legacy. When Aaron comes back, send Joe out to find him. Of course. Only one problem. His brother took a mouthful of beer and glanced sideways at him with black eyes. We can't afford to give these rebels any of our explosives. Mena laughed. Ha! We don't have to. We only need to play along until we get what we want. They're just cocky fools playing with guns. I guess, his brother shrugged. That other guy seemed to know his way around his assault rifle. Perhaps. That just means that when the time comes, we kill him first. Scene 19. Talon stood in what had once been a grand private library. Books sat in rows from the white marble floor to the vaulted ceiling on every available wall. Wooden bookshelf edges were carved with swirling cloth and little painted figurines dancing across the in-between spaces. Mildew peppered the faded book covers with green spots, and sections of the cream stone ceiling were marred with tongues of black from long-dead flames. Despite his fear and awareness of how dangerous these people were, Talon felt a flicker of sympathy for the family that must have died in the house. Do not feel pity for us, boy. The eldest Ronan, whose short black hair was grey above his ears, stared intently at him from across the room. Talon sensed something indescribably dangerous about the old man. He swallowed and tightened his grip on the weapon at his waist. Lalan and Usher had to stay behind at the hotel, leaving the four men to show a unified rebel presence in the Rona Aban manor. All of Talon's instincts told him to get out of there as soon as possible. He hoped that RA would trade, so this business could just be finished with, and they could go home again. There were 4 lawn chairs in the middle of the room, 2 on their side and 2 on the other, facing the first pair. The eldest Ronan, who made Tay's skin crawl, sat down. Another man, with a similarly square face and body, but at least 10 years younger, sat in the second chair. The elder Ronan indicated with one broad hand that someone should sit on the remaining 2 chairs. Bana came around the front, and then, clearing his throat tensely, Nama took the last chair. Next to Talon, Zack shuffled closer. Empathically, the young man seemed tense, but otherwise calm. However, Talon knew the boy's body language well enough, after 6 years, to know that he might be able to block his emotions empathically, but he was still really rather afraid. Talon understood completely. This is my brother Goyd. I am Mena, said the elder Ronan. Weren't you supposed to bring weapons with you to start the trade? Goyd was oddly relaxed, as if he was half drunk at a party and not in the middle of tense negotiations. We have only 2 spare autos right now, said Bana firmly. That was his cue, and Talon lifted the spare auto off his back. Zack did the same, and together they put them on the ground between the 2 sets of chairs. Bana continued. However, once we have an idea of how much you require, we can arrange for more to be brought across the border within a few days. Fine. Mena seemed emotionally neutral. Would you tell us about these arrangements for us to get our traitor? The rebels recently acquired a private jet. Bana matched tone with the elder Ronan, so we can fly across the border without any official problems. Once in the country, we have accommodation and transport, and we're acquiring the information on where your traitor is within the agency as we speak. Once in Arana, you'll have the information to be able to find him. After you've killed him, we can transport you back to Carmel. I'm sure if you add this to the offer of more weapons and ammo, you could appreciate how much of a good deal this is, simply for us to acquire some explosives. A good deal indeed, Mena grinned. How much do you need and what kind? The man seemed suddenly pleased with the deal, but Tay still sensed the constant threat of danger underlying it all. Bana didn't seem to notice the danger and smiled. Small, tactical, with an approximate radius of 10 meters. Amusement flickered around the old man. That's a very specific kind of explosive, but we just happen to have some. How soon can you get some of us to Arana? Bana shrugged. Just after lunchtime tomorrow? Mena got to his feet and offered Bana a hand to shake. I believe we have the beginnings of a deal. Excellent. Bana stood and took the older man's hand. Goyd has a list of the weapons we want. It's a fairly modest list, considering our numbers. I'd only ask that if we have people under your care in Arana, we should have the same number here under our care. Bana bowed his head formally. I will discuss this with my superiors and get back to you in the morning. Good. Before you go, would you like some food, perhaps a beer? Mena seemed too friendly all of a sudden. Bana shook his head. No, thank you, Mena. We really should get back to organize your weapons. Bana bowed formally a second time. Mena, Goyd, thank you for your hospitality. They left the house quickly, but not so fast that it looked like they were retreating. The gravel driveway seemed ridiculously long to Talon, and he had to fight his instinct to break into a run. The road beyond was quiet but dim. None of the street lights in the area were working. As they crossed the road, Talon noticed an odd-looking Ronin woman staring at them. She was dressed as if she was looking for a hookup, or doing so professionally, in a short skirt and low top, with long coloured stockings, but her hair was a mess. She wore a pair of old running shoes instead of something more appropriate. She held a cigarette between two long, coal-coloured fingers, but did not take a puff from it. There was something alien about her, icy and oddly terrifying. Warning bells went off in the back of Talon's head, and a sense of immediate danger shot through him. He telepathically tapped on the other men's minds. I think we're being watched. Lady in the corner. Something dangerous. Right, said Bana's deep, red mental voice. Talon, you and Nama go right at the intersection. Tell your sister to get out. Zack and I will go straight. If she follows you, lose her before you return to the fullback position near the jet. Yes, sir, he replied without thinking. Bana wasn't the leader of this mission, but in the absence of Usher, the man's confidence almost demanded that he become the leader.